الذين كفروا وقيل هذا الذي كنتم به تدعون قل أرأيتم إن أهلكني الله ومن معي أو رحمنا فمن يجير الكافرين من عذاب أليم قل هو الرحمن آمنا به وعليه توكلنا فستعلمون من هو في ضلال مبين قل أرأيتم إن أصبح ماؤكم غورا فمن يأتيكم بماء معين الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. إن الذين أجرموا كانوا من الذين آمنوا يضحكون وإذا مروا بهم يتغامزون وإذا انقلبوا إلى أهلهم انقلبوا فكهين وإذا رأوهم قالوا إن هؤلاء لضالون وما أرسلوا عليهم حافظين فاليوم الذين آمنوا من الكفار يضحكون على الأرائك ينظرون هل ثوب الكفار ما كانوا يفعلون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Inshallah, we have a program after Inshallah Sunnah. We have amazing speakers with us, Dr. Mizan Siddiqui and Sheikh Mustafa Omar, Dr. Marwa Azab, and Brother Wali, inshallah, will be speaking about how to deal with grief and an Islamic perspective on that, inshallah. So bear with us, and inshallah, there's food after, outside, and you can purchase food in the cafeteria before or after the event, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, we'll start shortly. If the ladies can move inside, inshallah, to the side of my left, inshallah. The ladies would like to join us in this side. Jazakumullah khair. And the gentleman will be on my. Assalamu alaikum, dear parents. I don't see a lot of young people, and I know there is a lot of young people outside, and this is actually also for them. So I would like to give parents maybe 2 minutes or 1 minute to call their kids or text them or like go bring them, inshallah, so they can, inshallah, be part of this discussion. It's not, inshallah, just a talk of, mashallah, here, experts, but also it's a discussion, and I'm sure, inshallah, your kids, and we recommend to be like 11 years old and up, inshallah, 12 years old up, inshallah, to be able to understand the contents that our speakers are presenting, inshallah, today. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. All praise and thanks are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Welcome to ISOC. We're excited to have everybody here. At the same time, we are honored to have all our guest speakers in this panel or this discussion or this talk that we'd like everybody to participate in. In the light of recent events, I'm sure everybody felt it or everybody was shaken by the events that took place last week. Or the week, even last week actually, exactly. A little bit over a week from today. It's not easy sometimes for individuals to handle a news like this, a tragic news or a news of death or a news of something tragic happened to them or loved one, but also even to hear the news of some people who are part of the community. And I still remember that day that we all standing here in Janazah for Yusuf and Umar and his wife Rayhan and the other two people who passed away, and mashallah, I felt the message is almost like Laylatul Qadr. Like people are praying outside. The message was fully packed, you know. But again, it's not the emotions and the feelings that we have at Laylatul Qadr or Taraweeh or Eid. No, it's the feeling of sadness, of sorrow that we have in our hearts. But as Muslims, how can, especially this is for the youth, when you hear this news, when you have some loved one of your family that you lost, how can you handle this? How can you handle your emotions? What are the good outlets that you can take your emotion out on? And this is, mashallah, a great panel of experts who know this as part of our deen and also know this as a part of the psychology of the human and the brain of the human too. Inshallah, we have 4 speakers with us, Dr. Muzammil Siddiqui, Dr. Marwa Azab, Sheikh Mustafa Umar, and Brother Wali, mashallah, and both of them experts in this field of the emotions, how to deal and handle grief and death that, you know, being going on around us. Inshallah, the format of this, that every speaker will have 10 to 15 minutes, inshallah, to speak. And then after that, inshallah, we will have a Q&A, and we would love to have our audience, inshallah, to ask questions and to say what's in their mind, inshallah. We will start with our leader and our Imam, Dr. Muzammil Sadiq, inshallah, and then Dr. Marwa Azab, and Sheikh Mustafa Umar, and then Brother Wali, inshallah. Jazakum Allah khair, and I'm handing the mic, inshallah, to Dr. Muzammil Sadiqi.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. Subhanallah, when Brother Ahmed mentioned a few days ago that would like to have a discussion on this subject, and this was, of course, because of the shock that we had on the tragic death of 3 people, Yusuf, Raihan, and their child, Umar. And I didn't know at that time that my family will go through with the grief also. And this morning, we got sad news, actually last night, that my wife's younger brother passed away. And then just and this happened within 4 months, because about 4 months ago, her elder brother passed away. And he passed away suddenly. And this one, of course, was not well for some time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless both of them and give them the place in Jannah and give us patience. So we are talking about how to deal with grief. And as you know, there are 2 words that occur in the Quran again and again. One is huzn, and the other is khawf. Huzn is grief. It is related to a loss, to a harm. Something happened, and that made you grieve, say that I had this loss. So it is related to something that already has happened. Khawf is is related to something that you're afraid that it may cause harm, it may cause loss, it may cause problem. So both of these are emotions that are given to us, and these emotions could be positive and could be negative. And it is important that we take lessons and understand that. And if we understand that, we'll be able to deal with them and overcome that. Both of them, whether it is grief or it is fear, there are certain things that are under our control, and there are certain things that are not under our control. Things that are under our control, and there's a lot of things that are under our control, we should try to learn and we should try to overcome, so that we can learn a lesson from that. So it may not, this loss will not happen. I mean, it's something, especially the loss of business, loss of job, some sickness also. You can see that I have taken care of myself, and I should take care of myself, so I don't have that again. Some other problems that may occur. So you say that, well, these are lessons that we can learn from that. So this is given to us, this feeling of loss, so that you can think about it, situation, and see how I can overcome that. And there are certain things that are not under our control, like somebody passed away, somebody got killed. So if we are in this situation that is not under our control, then in that situation we have to see what we can do. So things that are not under our control, the Quran tells us that we should have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we should recognize that whatever happened to us, it happens because by the will of Allah. Allah says in the Quran, in Surah At-Tawbah, قُلْ لَنْ يُصِيبَنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا هُوَ مَوْلَانَا وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Say, nothing will happen to us except what our Lord has written for us. هُوَ مَوْلَانَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ. Allah has written for us, and He is our Mawla. The word is Mawla, that means He is our protector, He is our the one who is guardian, and we trust in Him. So it is not that He doesn't have power or He does not wish good for us. No, He wished good for us. But this happened, so it must be His will. So we trust in Him. وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. So believers put their trust in Allah. And then also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hadid, ما أصاب من مصيبة في الأرض ولا في أنفسكم إلا في كتاب من قبل أن نبرأها إن ذلك على الله يسير لكي لا تأسوا على ما فاتكم ولا تفرحوا بما آتاكم والله لا يحب كل مختال فخور. Whatever musibah, whatever trouble that comes to you in the earth, in your surroundings, or within yourself, it is already written before it happens. And that is easy for Allah. So that you may not feel sad and sorry about what has missed you, and do not exult in things that you have. So on the one hand, you don't think, oh, I got it, or I did not get it. So in both ways, you don't get frustrated and don't exult. Wallahu la yuhibbu kulla mukhtalin fakhur. Allah does not like those who are arrogant boasters. So it is not in our control, and we trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And why it happened? The Quran says, I have only basically talking about the Quranic perspective on that. It is that it could be a test. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests people. Tests people in their happy situation as well as in their sad situation. So in both ways, the test is there. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ وَنَبْلُوكُمْ بِالشَّرِّ وَالْخَيْرِ فِتْنَةً. The Quran says that. And we shall indeed test you with some fear, some hunger, some loss of wealth as well as lives, and the produce, and give good news to the patient people. Mubashshir as-sabirin. And so, وَنَبْلُوكُمْ بِالشَّرِّ وَالْخَيْرِ فِتْنَةً. We shall test you by some good as well as some terrible, some trouble, some evil, as a test. So this is, it's recognized that there is a test, and the life is a test. خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given death and life both to test you. The whole life is the test, and every moment we are under the test. So some tests are, okay, people are living happy, and all this it is also a test. And people are not living happy, and this is also a test. So in each situation, there is a test. So if you are in difficulty, then you turn to Allah and seek His help. الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. The believers are those, بشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة, when they have any trouble, tragedy, then they say, we belong to Allah and we are returning to Him. On these people, there are blessings of Allah. Salawatun min Rabbihim. Salawat, when it's used for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it means blessing, sana. Allah praises them, and Allah is pleased with them, and Allah's mercy with them. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُهْتَدُونَ, and they are the guided people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was going through some difficulties too. So it is not that ordinary people, but even the messengers of Allah go through that. And they were saying things against him, they were trying to harm him and hurt him. And Allah said, وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُونَ. We know that you feel constrained in your heart because of what they are saying. They are accusing him. They're calling him Majnoon, Sahir, Sha'ir, all kind of things that they were saying to him. And so, وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُونَ. We know that these things are happening, and you are a human being. Yes, they happen to you. But what you should do? سَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَكُمْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. So praise your Lord and be from among those who do sajda. وَعَبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. And worship your Lord until that certainty will come. That means the end will come. Keep on worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until your death. And also the Prophet ﷺ used to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he taught this dua, a beautiful dua, a very comprehensive dua. He used to say, Allahumma inni a'udhuka min al-hammi wal-hazan wal-jubni wal-'izzi wal-kasal wal-jubni wal-bukhl wa dala'i ad-dayn wa ghalabati ar-rijal. O Allah, I seek your protection from the worries and from grief. Hum is something that is related to what is going may happen, what may happen. So al-hamm wal-hazan and grief, wal-'ajz wal-kasal, and disability and laziness. So disability, that you are physically unable to do something. And kasal is that you are physically able, but you are lazy. Cannot do it. Don't do it because of just laziness. It's not that you have physical problem, you don't have time, you have all of these things. But still you feel you don't do it. Wal-jubn wal-bukhl, and cowardliness and stinginess. So people are coward, they cannot help because they are afraid somebody may help them. They don't stand up for the rights of others because they are coward. They don't speak up. And the other thing is that people cannot spend some money to a person who is in need. They have wealth, they have money in them, but they don't give. So there is jubn and bukhl. Jubn is physical help, and bukhl is financial help. So they don't do that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save me from that. And then the other is dala'i ad-dayn wa ghalabati ar-rijal, and save me from the burden of debt. That is, take too much debt, and then after that, debt is the worry at night and shame and during the day. The creditors are there, and you have receiving all kinds of letters are coming up, and foreclosure of your home and your car and this and that, all things piling up the debt. So, and people, Islam teaches us that live debt free. And if you have it paid off as soon as possible, Ghalabatu ad-dayn is terrible. Dala'u ad-dayn, actually. Dala'u ad-dayn. And here, Ghalabatu rijal. And Ghalabatu rijal is, you find bullies in your neighborhood, in your school, at your job. People try to unnecessarily bother you and give you trouble. So Allah save me from such people. And these people are all different places. Even in the masajid you will find that. Some people who are trying to give you trouble. So Allah save me from that. So it's good to pray this dua, very, very comprehensive dua. Oh Allah, save me from these problems. And Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah explained that how these pairs are used. Hamm al-hazan, ajz al-kasal, jubn al-bukhr, ghalabatu ad-dayn, qahr al-rijal. All there. So put them into these 4 pairs. So these problems are connected with each other. So that is ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect. Ta'awuz, seeking Allah's protection from that. And then there is, grief and is also has benefits. Because if we had no grief, then we will not care. So it is, you can correct yourself. You can correct what has been going on. It helps that. So grief can be used in a positive way. And that's why people call these teaching moments. So these moments are to tell us some lessons, to learn some lessons from that. And if you lost something, well, then the one thing is that yes, you have lost something, but you may appreciate whatever you have and guard it, use it in the right way, so you don't lose it. So it's also a way of learning from that. Yes, you lost that, but you have something else. So, عسى أن تكرهوا شيئا وهو خير لكم وعسى أن تحبوا شيئا وهو شر لكم والله يعلم وأنتم لا تعلمون. You may like something, but you may not be good for you, and you may dislike something, it may be good for you, and Allah knows and you do not know. So it is in that sense. And if you lose a dear one, of course, that dear one is lost, gone. But you have to be patient. And if you are patient, then you know that Allah, the reward is great for that. Isbiru wa'tasibu, as the Prophet used to say, have patience and seek reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that. So that helps very much, overcome that. You cannot bring back, the person is gone, but by sabr and by patience and trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will receive أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَيْهِمْ صَلَوَاتٌ مِّن رَبِّهِمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ. And also appreciate the good time that you had with that person. That life a person lived with you for some time, alhamdulillah, Allah gave me that time, that thing. I enjoyed the company of that person. I had good memories from that person, and I cherish those memories. But at the same time, you have lost. So you can overcome that by appreciating. And you know, all this grief and sadness, nothing is permanent. This is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made. After some time, it goes away. Takes few months, maybe a year, but it goes. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made that way. These things do not stay. But what is there? As-sabru in the sadamatil ula. As soon as you have that time you have to have sabr. And then you overcome that fast. And then, remember, the Prophet said, Amrul mu'mini kulluhu khair. The believer is always a winner. In asabatu sarra shakar, wa huwa khairullah. If he is happy, prosperous, he is thankful to Allah, grateful to Allah, and it is good for him. Wa in asabatu dharra sabar, wa huwa khairullah. And if he is hurt, if he is in pain, if he is in difficulty, he is patient, and it is good for him. And then, finally, we should keep in our mind that in this world, there will be always fear and grief. This world is the world of fear and grief. This is not a perfect world. And the real place where there is no fear and no grief will be Jannah. أَلَا إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. The Quran says again and again and again, أَلَا إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Jannah is that place where there is no fear and there is no grief. And the believers, when they will enter the Jannah, they will say, Alhamdulillahi alladhi azhaba anna al-hazan. Inna rabbana la ghafurun shakur. Alhamdulillahi alladhi azhaba anna al-hazan. Thank be to Allah who removed the sadness from our heart. The sadness, the grief, it will be finally removed from the heart of the believers. And they will be very happy. La khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us that. That we will have no fear and no grief, inshallah. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Siddiqui, for this reminder that to everybody, every single one of us, I think we need, and we need to, inshallah, memorize the dua that Dr. Siddiqui shared with us. Hopefully we can teach it to our children and keep remembering this dua. Now, inshallah, we have Dr. Marwa Azab. She's a professor of psychology and human development at California State University, Long Beach. Inshallah, she's going to share some of her thoughts in the same subject.
Jazakallah khair.
Are you good with this one?
Oh, yeah, that's actually.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First, I want to start by apologizing to people who are close to this tragic incident, because there's nothing in my talk today that's going to take your pain away. So I just want to start by saying that. So I won't even attempt. And perhaps there's nothing that I'm going to say that's going to come close to what you've experienced in your heart, how this has affected your life. Nonetheless, I'll share some. If I were to make two predictions, for sure, about two things, I would say that one, that every single person in this room and who's watching and beyond this room will experience some sort of loss. Loss of a loved one, of a brother, of a sister, of a child, of an unborn child, of a marriage, of a husband, of a wife, of a relationship with an aging parent that now has schizophrenia or that now has dementia or that now has Alzheimer's disease. We will all experience some sort of loss. The second prediction that I'll make for every person in this room and beyond, for all billions of us in the world, is that every single person in this world shall taste death. These are two predictions that we're pretty confident will happen to everybody. The other thing is that I want to be honest with ourselves for a second. I didn't expect this turnout, mashallah, that's great. But if we can be honest for a second with ourselves, had this been a topic about death and the recent tragic incident did not happen, would we have the same number of people coming and interested in the topic? My feeling inside is perhaps not as many people would come to talk about death. Why? Because if we talk about something bad, it might happen. I'm Egyptian, so in my culture, people don't say the word cancer. Because if they say the word cancer, it might happen to you. So they'll say, the bad illness, the bad disorder. But the thing is, though, when we don't talk about it, we're not aware, right? So most people don't want to talk about sadness. They don't want to talk about bad things. They don't want to talk about death. Because if they talk about these things, they might happen to them. And, it's not funny, but perhaps kind of a paradox that it turns out that people who suffer from depression, they're actually much more realistic about the world than people who don't suffer from depression when you test them in research. They're much more accurate about how sad this world is than people who don't have depression. This is shocking, what happened, the tragedy. There's no doubt that this was shocking to everybody in the community and certainly to the people who were very close to them. There are many reasons why this is shocking, okay? But some of the reasons I want to capitalize on and talk about tonight is that perhaps this is shocking because we have gotten accustomed to many assumptions about death. Whether we acknowledge them, whether we're conscious of them or unconscious of them, but we make assumptions about death. Only old people die. Young people don't die. Nobody who's 15, 13, 20, 21, 30, according to little kids, they think above 30 is really old and is about to die. That's not true. I hope not. But is that, that we die when we're old. The other assumption that we make is that usually death has some sort of precursors, some sort of death is going to happen. So you get ill and then you're ill and you have a chance to make tawbah and repentance. That's not always true. And particularly for the youth, for adults, for myself, you're always thinking, okay, you're insistent on a particular sin, and you're saying to yourself that, it's okay. When I get old, I'm going to make repentance. Right? We have these assumptions that make this a very shocking, unexpected. So I invite you that today, after this horrific incident that happened, to re-examine your own assumptions about death. Talk to yourself, maybe not in public, but just you and yourself, or maybe a person that you trust, and ask yourself, what assumptions did I have about death that were severely violated, that were proven to be inaccurate after this incident? And be honest with yourself. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. The thing is, though, death doesn't follow any rules. Not your rules, not my rules, not your mom's rules, not your dad's rules, not your boss, not your pediatrician, not your doctor, not anybody's rules. It follows the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has decreed the day to His wisdom. We may understand, we may not understand, but we are told what to say and to have faith. It is normal. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this, that I'm saying we shouldn't feel sad. It's very normal after something shocking like this to feel sad, to cry, to maybe lose some sleep over this, to be missing the person that, that you lost, or the relationship that you lost, and to cry. These are all very normal feelings, that very healthy. The Prophet ﷺ cried when he lost his son. What is not normal, though, and what's of concern, that perhaps if you're experiencing it, or a loved one, you notice they're showing these signs, is that you no longer have kind of interest in anything in this dunya. All of a sudden, things that used to make you happy no longer make you happy. Your kids don't make you smiles. Seeing your best friend doesn't make you smile. So you lose interest. And this goes on for a long time. That's not good. The other thing is that you either sleep too much or you sleep too little. So, either you're taking forever to go to sleep, or you're waking up numerous times in the night, or you're waking up exceptionally early at 3, 4 o'clock and you can't go back to sleep. And it's not because of qiyam. The other thing is like losing too much weight or gaining too much weight that's not explained by any kind of like diet. That's a little bit scary as well. Your cognition is not all there. So your reaction time is slow. You're very easily irritable. You can't focus, your attention. So all of these signs are not really healthy signs when they go on for a long time. Also having flashbacks, depending on what the degrees of freedom is, how far you were or close to the incident. Flashbacks, nightmares, and even in worst kind of PTSD, even having hallucinations that the person is there. That's really scary signs. So these are things you really have to pay attention with too. So these are kind of the symptoms according to like the Western medicine, Western psychology. But from my experience with people and having lived in this world for some time, there's also existential, spiritual concerning symptoms. That's what I like to call them. Such as you start to feel guilt. You start to feel it's unfair that you are living and they are not. You start to doubt, why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do that? It's not fair. They were such good people. They've done such good in this world. Why would Allah do that? Why does Allah hate me? Once you start to have these questions, reach out. Reach out to someone. Or if you know someone that has these questions, reach out. So, although these are not like symptoms that are in the typical Western kind of text, but they're certainly kind of very concerning. Or making the decision that you are, okay, so Allah left you alive, but I'm going to, die slowly because suicide is haram. So I'm going to give up on dunya, I'm going to give up on life, I'm going to sleep too much, I'm going to, fall ill, all of that. Basically, I'm dying slowly. These are all very unhealthy kind of things. This recent loss, or any loss that you may have experienced, may also have awakened in you your own traumas, right? Or maybe rekindled existing, or maybe uncovered some depression symptoms that maybe you've had earlier, or any other mental disorders. Or maybe they revealed some genetic vulnerabilities that you have for these mental illnesses. Or even they have planted the seeds for the beginning of a new mental illness. Much of research has shown one fact over and over again, and that is typically and often the first episode of depression, of an anxiety, of PTSD, of these kind of stress-related disorders, they are preceded by a stressful event. That gives rise to the first episode, just like a stroke, just like a heart attack. Once you have the first episode of depression, of a panic attack, whatever, that your chances of a second one are higher. And now the second one, your threshold for stress is now less. So it doesn't need to be a tragic death. It doesn't need to be a loss. It could be something very little stress. And it throws you into another, the deep kind of dark oceans of depression, major depressive episode. And the third one is even much more likely than the second one. And perhaps doesn't even need a stressor at all. You just jump into it with no kind of precursor to it. So this is a time to definitely introspect and pay attention to what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're doing. And if you don't know how to do that, ask somebody who knows you very well. If you see changes in me, let me know. Because you don't want this to escalate. There's this exercise. We don't have time to do it today because initially I was told I have 20 minutes and now it's shortened. But I want you to think about this exercise, or maybe note it on some digital device that I'm sure everyone has in this room. Is one, think about if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were to choose you today, what adjectives would people describe you with? What would your eulogy look like? Like what are the adjectives? Be honest with yourself. Nobody's going to look at this list. You can erase it after, just for yourself. Then I want you to start another list and write down the adjectives of what you would like to be described as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses you, soon. And then make every effort to bridge the gap between where you are today and where you would like to be remembered as. So that's just something to keep in mind. I don't know if Brother Ahmed told you about the event, right? That was going to happen. Okay, but let's say that you're invited to this event. Only one person will be chosen. One person is going to go. Where you're going to go, you're going to know nobody. You will have no itinerary to tell you what are the list of events, what's going to happen next. You're not very familiar where that place is, what it looks like. Would you be a little bit scared going there? Just a tad, right? But that's not the case that we have, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He said there's Judgment's Day, there is heaven, when He described for us exactly what's happened in the Quran and Sunnah. And He used analogies of what Jannah looks like from things that we have in this world. The jewelry, the color green, right? The swings, the fruits, all of the things that we like. So we kind of get a feeling of what that looks like. So it's not like you're completely, that death is completely unknown. We haven't maybe raised awareness about it. We haven't learned about the exact events, but the descriptions are certainly there. So I know, mashallah, there's a lot of youth and a lot of students. So I want to kind of like ask the students, what do you do if I tell you you have a test in a month, let's say social studies, and you have 3 chapters, you find it extremely overwhelming. How do you deal with this anxiety over the test that's coming in a month? What do you do? I heard it. What do you do? Tawakkul, sure, but that's not going to be the only thing you do, inshallah, right? Okay, what else would you do? Procrastinate? I hope your teachers, both of you, are not here today. Oh, they're here. So you would probably study, right? And every day, the more you study, the more your anxiety is going to be under control. So inshallah, that's our test in the hereafter, death, all of that. It's a test. And if you're in a state of constant preparations, that hopefully, inshallah, will tame the anxiety about death a little bit. So, death, at least to me, is not the opposite of life. We don't say life is the opposite of death. You will never enjoy life, at least in my humble opinion, unless you're very content with death. That you're satisfied with the fact that there's going to be unfinished business in this world, and that's okay because there's an after death. You're very comfortable with that idea. So, where do we go from here after today? Like, what are the to-do lists? What are you supposed to do? 1, be in a constant state of preparation, not perfection. Certainly not perfection, but in a constant state of preparation. Every day I'm taking 1 step for better preparation. 2, learn more about death as though you will die tomorrow. And 3, work in this dunya to be as successful as you can in the most halal means possible as though you're going to live forever. And 4, introspect. And what I mean by that, how was I before this horrific incident? How am I now? Is there a difference? Is that difference meaningful in terms of moving me forward? Is that difference scary in terms of making me fall into an illness that I kind of don't want? And then also learn about what resources you have available, okay? And then examine your feelings. We all have feelings. Sadness is a very normal feeling. Ask yourself, how are you making that sadness service your needs? Because every feeling, every emotion has a function. And the function of sadness is to not make your life miserable, but is to make you connect, to make you feel compassion, to commiserate, to have sympathy, empathy, to build communities. So you've got to ask yourself, how am I using these feelings? How am I using this sadness? Am I using it to isolate myself? To be like out of the community? To disconnect? Or am I using my sadness to connect? To tell people, you know what, I don't feel good. I'm scared of what I'm going to do. You know, and I'm okay, and I'm vulnerable, and I'm okay with that in front of you. So this is kind of something to think about, and I will end with this, inshallah, is that in the US, and certainly Muslims are no exceptions to these statistics, that 1 every 3 Americans in the USA will, throughout their lifetime, will have symptoms that are consistent with the most severe psychiatric disorders. 1 every 3. Actually, it's more than 1 every 3. But let's stay with that. And I think the more we are content with the idea that we're individualistic, we don't need each other, that we're self-sufficient, I can take a magic pill to make my depression go away, I have my money, I don't depend on you. The more we do this, the more that these numbers are going to stay the same. So there's no reason why we as a Muslim community wouldn't be exemplary in reducing these numbers. So I'll leave you with that, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum for your attention.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Marwa. That's very enlightening, actually. And I have an example. I will share it later on of what you have said. I just want to have observation, you know, as somebody who's looking at the audience. And that's something I'm going to take it to the dads. If I just want to look at the young girls we have here, how many girls, youth we have, to compare to the other side, how many boys, youth we have sitting inside the masjid. I think that's a problem, and this problem has to be solved or has to be defined, you know. If you see, mashallah, many girls, teenagers in the masjid sitting, listening to the talk, and we don't see that much boys, I think there is still a lot of work to be done. You know, I'm not going to take more, but this is kind of a frustration they have it in me. I would like to share it more with the parents. We have next, inshallah, Sheikh Mustafa Umar, who is actually the founder and the president of California Islamic University. And mashallah, they're doing an amazing job in serving the community of Southern California. Jazakallah, Sheikh.
Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah, wa ba'd. You know, this incident of these 3 people who passed away is something that's very personal to me. You know, Sister Rehan was one of the sisters who used to be in my youth group when I was Imam in Corona Masjid. In fact, her first job and my first secretary I've ever had in my life work for me, she was that person inside the masjid, working for the masjid and working under me. And I was there for her wedding with Brother Yusuf, and their son Omar, who is 3 years old, was actually a friend of my own children, who are 5 and 6. So this is something that was very close to me, and it's something that we have to learn to process whenever we're dealing with the death of a loved one, whenever we're dealing with the loss of a very important job, a very important person, if money is very important to you, loss of money, loss of anything that causes you grief, one of the questions we are going to always ask ourselves is, why does Allah let these things happen? This is something that I hear all the time, especially younger people. And one of the reasons why younger people are more affected by this, in my opinion, my theory, is because younger people generally in America, the ones who grew up, were born and raised in the United States or in a country, they tend to be more individualistic than the elder generation, as we say, the elder generation. And the reason is because they grew up in a different environment. They grew up in an era where everything is on demand. And I know even our classes at California Islamic University, we have on-demand classes. You can start whenever you want, you can stop whenever you want. Anytime you need something, you're hungry, you have food available for you. Anytime you want to send a message, you want to buy something, you go to a website, you have it available. Amazon, why wait 3 days for shipping? You can get Prime. Why wait even for that? You can get free 1 day, and now you have free same-day shipping. So anything you want, you can get it right now. And what happens is, when people get so used to getting whatever they want all the time, they constantly expect that, and that becomes the norm for them. And when it becomes the norm, it becomes this principle, what people call entitlement. They feel that they are owed something because of just the fact that that's the way it's supposed to be. And I think it's very difficult for people to deal with challenges in life when they grow up getting everything that they want whenever they want it. Even if it's small things. If they're quote-unquote spoiled. I know there's a better word than that, right? But if they get most of the things that they want and they don't necessarily need, what ends up happening is there's a connection between that lifestyle and the difficulty in coping with loss in life. Loss of anything. If you get a bad grade, it's different. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, somebody gets a bad grade, they're told, you know what? You just need to study harder. You need to work harder. Today, there's a movement, there's a trend. You get a bad grade, look at this teacher. Who does she think she is? Parents are going to go and complain, they're going to fight with the teacher. How dare you do something like this to my child? And then everyone gets an award. In competitions, there's even competition, everybody wins. We don't want anyone to feel bad because they got a bad grade because someone did better than the other. So this is the culture in which we live, which makes it more difficult to process grief, and that difficulty in processing grief actually leads even more to questioning the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in why He allows things to happen that we think are evil, that we think are bad. And the first thing we have to remember is this is a question that is natural. It's okay to ask the question as long as you're asking to understand and you're not asking the question rhetorically to challenge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So much so that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the angels, He tells us the story. He says, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. Remember when your Lord said to the angels, I'm going to create a deputy on the earth. I'm going to create a human being on the earth. What did they say? قَالُوا أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءِ. Are you going to create this human being, this thing that's going to just cause fasad? It's just going to cause problems. وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءِ, and it's going to be shedding blood. وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. And we angels, all we do is we glorify you, Allah. This doesn't make any sense to us. The angels are questioning before human beings have even been created. They're saying, Allah, we don't understand the wisdom in this. This doesn't make any sense to us. Why is it that you're going to create a new creation, put it in charge of the earth, and we know it has free will, it's going to cause all these problems, and we would never cause those problems. Why would you do that, O Allah? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers, قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I understand something that you don't understand. He doesn't give them the direct answer. He gives them an answer kind of throughout the rest of the story in a subtle way you can understand the answer. The answer is pretty simple. As Dr. Muzammil mentioned, the answer is life is a test. And if life is a test and you're going to be graded, you have to have free will. You have to have the ability to do something good or do something bad. And when something bad happens, if the human being has the ability to do something bad, then that's the only way there can be a test of life. And human beings have other distinctions. So what's going to happen is we have to understand that when we are trying to understand why does Allah cause the death of so-and-so person? Why would Allah cause the death of a child? Why would Allah cause the death of, or such and such thing to happen? There's two things to always keep in mind. Number one is that it's a test from Allah. It's a test for that person, and it's a test for other people who are connected to that person. The second thing to keep in mind is that evil, or the definition of something evil happened, something bad happened. Bad is relative. Bad is a relative concept. Evil is a relative concept. There was a book of philosophy I was reading about this subject of the problem of evil in philosophy and all of that. And one of the things they had a funny example. They said, a cow dying, is it evil or is it good? If you like hamburgers and you like to have the beef, then the slaughtering of that cow for you is a great thing. The slaughtering of the cow for the cow is an evil thing because it lost its life. Evil and bad and good is something that is relative depending on which human being we're referring to. Because there's a greater purpose in life, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a wisdom behind why He does what He does. And this is something we should always keep in mind. So I'm going to keep it short. I had some other things to say, but there was a scholar by the name of Al-Izz ibn Abdus Salam. He was a scholar who wrote a treatise, and in his treatise, he wanted to clarify this point, and he said, these are 17 reasons why Allah tests people. 17 benefits of why Allah tests people. I'm just going to mention 5 of them and then I'll conclude. It says, number 1, Allah tests people with difficulties and stuff to demonstrate that there is a creator. There is a Lord who is testing you, and to remind you that you are not God. To remind you that you are the one who's being tested and He is testing you. Number 2, those tests oftentimes lead people to become more sincere. It leads people to make tawbah and get repentance and ask Allah for forgiveness. How many people have changed their lives? When a loved one close to them has lost their life, or something bad happened, or someone themselves, they get an illness, cancer. You know, I'm not Egyptian, so I can say it. You know, I don't believe in that stuff. You know, some calamity happens to them, there's some difficulty in their life. Then what happens? It brings them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those things are actually, from that person's perspective, they're great. You know, Yusuf Islam is one of the very famous people Muslims are aware of. Yusuf Islam, Cat Stevens, the former singer. He says something that always stays in my mind. He says, the best thing that ever happened to me in my life is that I got tuberculosis. He used to drink a lot. He was going around, partying, touring around. He got tuberculosis. He was in the hospital. He almost died. Very serious illness. And he said, that's the best thing that ever happened to me, because it made me realize the seriousness of life. And then it eventually led me to find Islam, and it changed my entire life. We look at things from a very different perspective. Then Al-Izz ibn Abdul Salam, he says, number 3, he says, other people get to help others in the calamity that they have. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises people who give charity to orphans and help those people who are in need. How can you help people who are in need if nobody's in need? How can you help an orphan if nobody's an orphan? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises those people who fight in the path of Allah and stop oppression from happening. How can you stop oppression if there is no oppression? There can be no virtue if there is no contrasting vice in this world. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set that up in this way. Number 4, He says it allows you to appreciate the blessings that you have. When you get the flu, when you get sick, you realize what your health really was. When you get some terminal illness, you realize what you had in life. Even that little headache that you have, you begin to appreciate everything that you had, otherwise you take it for granted. And number 5, you will be rewarded in the next life if you are patient. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Alif Lam Mim, أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Do people think that they're going to be left to say we believe and they're not going to be tested? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we tested those people before them, and Allah will certainly, clarify and differentiate between the people who are truthful and the people who are lying. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us successful in these tests and to help us to cope with the challenges, every challenge, every difficulty, every test that we face, and to be successful in that. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh Mustafa. Hopefully, inshallah, one day you can share with us more of those lessons. Hopefully, we can apply them in our daily lives, the lessons of why we get tested. Next, inshallah, we have with us brother Wali Abdul Hanif Zia. He is, mashallah, has his master's in social studies from USC, and he's working toward his PhD in global leadership from Pepperdine University. Also, mashallah, he's a clinical social worker who actually serves, mashallah, in therapy to groups and individuals. And he'll give us, inshallah, hopefully particular steps, inshallah, we can use.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope all of you are doing well. So before we even go on, I have a bone to pick with Brother Ahmad. Just like Dr. Marwa said, she got 20 minutes, but then now she got 15 minutes to speak. Brother Ahmad had told me I will go first, but I'm going last. So I hope that helps, because mashallah, we have amazing speakers who have really stated a lot of today's talk as well. So before getting started, I know this topic of individualism was shared today. This is very important to pinpoint, especially for parents and for the youth. I know children, they're a little bit young, but for the parent and for the youth, if you do, so what I want to talk to you guys about this situation. So Dr. Muzammil Siddiqui has to go, so please excuse him. So the idea of individualism, right? So I came to the U.S. when I was 10. I came from Afghanistan. Coming to America and going to the school, going to school in the institution here, and the way how life works, we are taught to be individualistic. Everybody knows this. Certain parents have a hard time understanding this because majority of their time was spent back home. When they come here, they're usually working paycheck to paycheck. They don't get time to go to school and get educated. And how the American system works, it's just like a non-stop engine that you have to put your time into it. As we know, we keep on going and going and going, and you eventually burn out. So what I learned over time, I was very much in a battle with my own family at times when it came to individualism. Kind of battling them and saying, no, let me do my own thing. And my parents would say, no, this is not how it's done. You got to take this approach. As a community, we work together. And in my head, it was like, no, I can do everything. And I'm in high school and I'm in college. And this was about 10 years ago. And then lately, what ended up happening, 7 years ago, I came to realize, and even now, I came to understand that when you're in the system here in America, they teach you this. No matter what happens to you, especially your kids, no matter what happens to them, so me growing up here, they had taught me that no matter what happens as I get older, I should not rely on my children or grandchildren. That's how the system works. You do what you do for yourself. And that's where the disconnect happens. So I've got siblings, younger siblings, who are constantly fighting with my parents. And now I'm sitting kind of like in a tennis court. I see a wall, and I see two sides talking to each other. I fully understand it. They don't see each other's point of view. So that's also very important that, Sheikh Mustafa and Dr. Umar would touch bases on it, because we really have to understand this. Now, getting into the topic of today, how to deal with grief. Can somebody tell me, is grief an illness or not? What do you guys think? Yes. It's a state of mind. No, but just yes or no question. Is grief an illness? Would you consider it an illness? Yes? It isn't an illness. And let's hope it's not an illness. And not just that, but no two people experience grief the same way. Everybody experiences grief in different ways, in different forms. Grief is an inevitable fact of life, one that each person must unfortunately face no matter what happens. Even in Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 155, it was quoted that we will surely test you with something of fear and hunger and a loss of wealth and lives and fruits as well. So as long as you are on this earth, you will surely experience a loss of your loved ones. So by raise of hand, who has actually has experienced somebody dying in their family? I mean, everybody has experienced someone or somebody who has passed away, right? And it doesn't mean that if you have a family member that passes away, and it doesn't mean it can be your family member, and it can also be your property. A lot of us that come in from Afghanistan, Syria, that left our homes, motherland, it's also a form of grief and loss, because we have lost our form of identity, and that's also a struggle that we face. And now coming to this tragic community event that took place about a week and a half ago, I really didn't know the family, I'll be very honest, but hearing the story behind, how this young couple lost their lives, and not just that, but their 3-year-old little baby, who was its first time going out and kind of checking out the society at the day of Halloween, and this event took place, was very tragic. Even on the day of, we saw so many people come here for their support, and as many hearts were bleeding and so many hearts were kind of grieving, as you guys, if you guys were here, you could have saw that there was no space here in the masjid for them. So it was that powerful. To make it short, I would like to, we would like to kind of have a question-answer session. I think it's much easier. But there's a couple of things that I still want to touch bases on and discuss. Does grieving have a period? Like, how long does grieving, if you guys were to answer that question? 3 years? 3 days? Oh, 3 days. Okay, 3 days. Anybody else? How long does it take for grief to last? Perfect, yeah. How many people you have lost in your lives? Okay. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. You know what? You can't really put a time limit when it comes to grief and loss. That's kind of the answer to it. The best answer to say it takes as long as it can take. The only thing I would also suggest and talk about is no matter what you do, you can always postpone grief, but you cannot avoid it. You can always postpone it. Now, when we go back to what are certain things that we can do and as folks to help ourselves, to bettering ourselves on how to deal with grief, number one, you let yourself grieve. How many people here actually allow themselves to grieve? Raise your hand, guys. How many people grieve? It's a common, normal thing. Everybody grieves. So it's important to express those grievances. Sometimes it doesn't mean you have to cry. As men, we're taught not to cry as much, right? What do we end up doing? What do we do in order to help ourselves grieve? What was it? You can overcome it, but what are other forms of grieving? Counseling? Counselation? Okay, yes. What else? You guys got to speak. Question, yes. So trying to read discussing and knowing, how the Prophet, peace be upon him, and how much challenges he went to, and looking at his story and the passing of his parents, uncle, grandparents, and loved ones, and then also consideration. Number two, looking after yourself. What that means is that coping with grief is So the other thing is that you want to look after yourself. And how can you do that? What you want to do is you want to avoid things that are harmful to you. These are things where Dr. Marwazab said you can see patterns of your body shaping differently. Either you're gaining weight or you're losing weight. You want to ensure that you're fully conscious of knowing after any form of grief that you understand that if something happening to your body physically or not. There's other people who actually start using alcohol and drugs. That also takes place, and it takes place here in our own community as well, and we have to be mindful of that. These are things that are these are temporary things, and what they end up doing is that they'll go ahead and take your focus away from reality for a couple of hours, and after that, you're going back into the same cycle of drugs and alcohol. You want to give yourself time out of the pain and do something that you really enjoy. Do what you enjoy mainly doing. If it's writing, if it's reading, if it's going out with family, with friends, take the time to do that. Then also, one of the things that you can also do is let people know how they can help you. I know as a community, we really don't come out and we talk to others about our grief experiences. The community is here for you. When it comes to the masajids, the imams, we have counselors, therapists, specialists that are here that can help make your life and make the process of grief much easier. So please try to come and take advantage of these services and resources. And how does grief become a problem? Well, sometimes you're unable to come to terms with your loss, and what that ends up doing is that it makes your life much difficult in the long term. As we discussed, you can always postpone it, but you can't avoid it. Eventually, what ends up happening is that this will take place years. Instead of taking 3 days or even 6 months or a year, this will keep on going even lifetime. This is a process that can be very difficult for you guys. Other information that you guys can say or talk about with your family, with your friends, or with your community members are, you can let them know how you care. Acknowledge their feelings and tell them how much you guys mean, how much you mean to them. Let them know that you're there for them. Always ask questions. Always be there to listen to them. Because a lot of folks that go through grief and loss, they go through deep challenges when it comes to this. Be tolerant. This usually when somebody's going through grief, you know, they're out of character. You might not like it, but at the same time, remember that at this point in time, they're going through some form of challenge or struggle. Look out for signs of suicide. That's also another prominent signs and symptoms as well. And things that you do not want to do when it comes to somebody who's trying to deal with grief is don't minimize their loss. Let them talk about it. Even if it means that, you know, they're constantly talking about it, it's okay. If you do get, you know, if you come to a point where you get stressed out and you're like, oh my God, this guy's continuously talking about his grief and it's, you know, it's not helping, refer him out to a professional. Don't think you can take away their pain, because you can't. The best thing you can do is to be there for them and then refer them out to a specialist that can help them grieve in that terms. And one of the things before we finish and we go to our Q&A session is that I also have a personal story of my own. Last year, may Allah forgive my mother-in-law, she passed away of battling cancer, you know, battling cancer for 2 years. So last year around this time, she passed away. So it was a tragic event that took place with myself, my wife, with our family. You know, it took me probably a couple of months, you know, to help heal and to accept the fact that, you know, my mother-in-law passed away. So even till this day, it's been 1 whole year. My wife is still going through the same, you know, process of grief and loss. She's still in the denial stage. And there's 5 stages when it comes to grief and loss. You have denial, number 1. You have anger, where you get angry, like what went wrong, why did this happen, why did this person you know, why did they have to die? Then you have bargaining, where you start bargaining with God. Or you tell God, I wish it was me, you could have taken my life away and you could have spared my loved one. Number 4 is depression. You fall into a depressive symptom. This is where you will eventually have suicidal thoughts if you don't get proper help or services. And then number 5, the 5th and the last stage is called the acceptance stage, where you eventually come to terms. And what ends up happening is that this is where you take proper initiations on coping better on a day-to-day basis. You know that this person has passed away, but you're taking better care of yourself. So the reason why I'm telling you this story is that my wife till this day goes through grief and loss. And I know her pattern of sadness. So this is how it works. Every week, whenever Wednesday comes along, her mood goes down. Thursday, it gets worse. Friday, she cries and she breaks down. Reason why that happens is, you know, and I was able to even catch the pattern afterwards, after a month or 2, after when my mother-in-law had passed away, was because on Wednesday, my mother-in-law passed away. On Thursday, you know, she was still with us, but Friday, till we had to do paperwork, it was in San Diego, they buried her. So what ends up happening is, even subconsciously, your mind, when we talk about PTSD and trauma, anything that you smell, you hear, you see, your body biologically triggers, and it goes in a state of shock. You're not even aware of it. And that's what, you know, usually that's how people feel when they go through grief and loss. Sometimes they're not even aware of what they're doing or what they're saying. So please be very mindful of yourself, you know, your friends, your family members, when it comes to this process and when it comes to dealing with grief and loss. It's not an easy process, but inshallah, as you guys are all here, you guys have taken the step, one of the steps to making a change within the community. So for that, I'm not going to say much more, and then I'll have Brother Ahmed come here, and then we can have a Q&A session so we can better, have a better discussion. Jazakallah khairan.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Wali, for this amazing, actually, explanation of grief itself. I would like to have, inshallah, if anybody has questions, I would like to share like a story that I heard myself of famous sheikh, you know, mashallah, he's not here with us, he's somewhere else. If you know him, Google him, listen to him, Sheikh Muhammad Ratib al-Nabulsi. Once he was actually asked this question, he's like, are you content? Do you feel this life is fair? Do you think what's going on to you as a Syrian and what's going on in Syria is fine? And this matter of like, okay, the difficulty that the people of Syria are going through. He said, of course I'm content. Of course I'm like happy. And then they asked him, was like, are you sure? It's like, what's going on? Why do you feel, this like contentment that you have in your heart? He's like, for a simple reason. And he recited the ayah from Surah Al-Qasas, ayah number 61, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave an example. He said, is it the same if the person Allah is exactly the translation, is he whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised a good promise for the hereafter, similar to that person who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him all the enjoyment of this life, and in the day of judgment, this person who was given enjoyment of this life will be brought for punishment. Is it the same? And he made it more understandable when he said, he said to the people, I want to give you this example. Imagine there is a man who has no relatives except his uncle. Everybody passed away. And he has a family and he has 5 children. They live in a small apartment. And he's not able to pay the rent. And one day, his uncle, who is a billionaire, who has like a lot of money, and he said $500 million, pass away. And there's no one else to inherit this money except this man. This poor man who has 5 children, live in an apartment, couldn't even pay rent. He said something. He said, but when they did the inheritance, they went to court, everything. The court said, you will receive the money, but not today, next year. The question, would this man be living in sadness, or this man will be like, fine, like in 1 year, my life will be the best? Just think about it. This life is a test. Everybody here, accepted that or said that life is a test here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing us. So we're going, inshallah, to a better place. Those loved ones also, inshallah, be a better place. But how can we handle ourselves in this life? And that's an example in the story I would like to share with everyone here. And would like, inshallah, if you have a question, please raise your hand. The microphone will come so our speakers can hear you. And please, if you like to specifically, point your question to one of our speakers, that will be, inshallah, encouraged and better, inshallah. Any questions? Yes.
Okay, so like, I don't know if this is going to make sense, but there's like the ayah in Surah Al-Mu'minun where it's like, حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءَ أَحَدُ الْمَوْتِ قَالَ رَبِّ something like that, right? Anyway, but like, my question is like, when somebody's passed away, is it possible to feel grief on like their behalf if they're in like the barzakh world, or no? Like, is the grief that you feel just like your personal grief, or is some of it also like aired in a sense?
Any of the speakers would like to take this question? Okay. Sheikh Mustafa, please.
Alhamdulillah. No, so that's an interesting question. So what I think you're saying is that, there's grief. If somebody close to you, your friend, passes away, you're feeling sadness and grief because they passed away, because of your connection with them. But you're kind of asking, can you feel the sadness that they're feeling because they passed away? Okay, so the first thing is being in the state of barzakh and what they're going through and all of that. So that's an interesting question. Well, the thing is this. First of all, we don't know exactly what their state is going to be. We don't know what the state of anyone is going to be. People are going to be questioned, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what they've done in this life. So we leave judgment to Allah, and whatever happens in the barzakh period, during that period of time, it's going to resemble what's going to happen on Yawm al-Qiyamah, on the Day of Judgment for that person. So we don't know if they're going to be shaqi or sa'id, meaning that they're going to be miserable or they're going to be happy or content. So that's one aspect of it. We don't know what their situation is going to be. The second is, we have this concept of empathy, right? Like, you feel what the other person is feeling, right? But again, we can't feel it because we don't know what state they're in. And two, how would we even be able to understand something that is beyond anything we've ever experienced in this reality? So I don't think it would be something that is possible. Nor should anyone try to do it, because I don't think it's even within the realm of possibility while you're alive to be able to experience it. nor is there any benefit to that actually. You know, so it's an interesting question, but I don't think it's beneficial for someone to try to reflect upon what it might be like, because it's kind of like shooting in the dark. Okay?
Any questions? Yes.
I have a question about somebody suffering or any kind of disease or, you know, bed or something. So that person doesn't want to live anymore because he or she is suffering. So those person can ask Allah as soon as, is it okay to ask Allah as soon as take me away from, or maybe the family member or somebody can like take him away.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yeah, so this is something that happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Somebody came and asked the Messenger of Allah that, you know what, can somebody ask for death if they're suffering and they're in pain? And there was one of the people, one of the Muslims who was injured and they were in pain, and they went and they took their own life and they killed themselves. And the Prophet ﷺ criticized that person, said what they've done is very wrong. So then he taught us a principle. He said that if it's become so difficult for you to live with the situation because you're in pain or there's some illness or something, then you can make this dua. You don't ask Allah to take your life, but what you do is you say, oh Allah, keep my life as long as this life is good for me, and take away my life if that is what's best for me. So you keep making that dua, oh Allah, if my ending of my life is better for me, then do that. And you're leaving it up to Allah, but you're kind of like explaining to Allah that, you know, this is very, very difficult for me. Oh Allah, help me out of this situation, and Allah will help you in that situation if it's best for you. But you always put your trust in Allah that He knows whether it's going to be better, because some people, they may take their life and it was just one more day and they would have been fine, you know, and then, but they don't know that, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that. Some people, you know what, they're like, I can't take it anymore, I'm done with this life, and then you know what, 24 hours later, entire life changes, they move on, 10 years, they live another 10 years, and you know, this was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This happened to one of the companions. He thought he was going to die. He started making a will, he was leaving behind everything. He said, I'm finished, I'm done. But he didn't die. He lived like another 10 years, you know. So this is the dua that we should make, inshallah.
Maybe thinking about barzakh or thinking about people who we lost and we love them so much, which can help us to deal with that, is that we are their hope now. We can make dua for them, we can make charity for them, and Allahu Alam, if we will find somebody else to do that for us, we'll think positively about them, that they are lucky that they have us here. We still have to continue charity instead of them, and make dua, read Quran, whatever we can. This will help, I think.
Any more questions? Any questions? I just want to also mention Brother Wali. He works at Genesis Medical Center, where they do a lot of counseling services. If you're interested, they have a flyer here with a lot of their information and what they do, inshallah. If you have any questions, please also see Brother Wali, and he can help you when it comes to that sense, inshallah. Inshallah, it doesn't seem like we have much questions, inshallah, so we'll end the program, inshallah. Jazakum al khair for being here. We have, oh, your question, okay, sorry.
Okay, so I have a question. Okay, so we have had a lot of loss in our family, and how is it, or how can we better communicate our feelings of sadness or of moments where we miss that loved one? How can we better communicate that and teach our children that it's okay to have those feelings? Especially when maybe our spouse is more of the closed-minded, you know, leave it to Allah, don't think about it, just keep going, move forward.
and but our children get confused from that because they don't know, is it okay if I'm upset about missing grandma? But daddy, he's fine, and daddy, he's not showing any emotion about grandma, but my mom over here is a wreck. You know, how can we teach our children, or how can we be better examples for our children?
Good question. Thank you for your question. So, number one, it's everybody grieves differently. Like I said earlier, you know, especially with men, we're a little bit more bold and we don't show our emotions. What needs to happen here is, number one, both parents need to sit down, especially at this point of time. It's very important for the kids to understand that something has taken place at the house. You know, somebody has passed away, and it is okay to grieve. So that comes from both parents. Reason why I say that is that kids usually don't understand, you know, what the process of grief is like. They are also going through, you know, grief and loss, but what they end up doing is that they usually show it through expression of anger, aggression. You know, they'll fight, they'll cry, either they'll go to sleep, they're sleeping too much or too little, they stay isolated from others. So the best thing would be, I think, here would be both parents need to get together, you know, and talk to the child and talk about how they have different forms of coping skills. So the child understands that it's okay, my parents are going through it, and it's okay for me to also express my own feelings a certain way. I hope that helps.
Questions and stuff like
This question about cursing someone. Not always we cannot bring everyone to the law, because we cannot, lot of things we cannot prove in the court or something. Like somebody like a very bad person, he or she like a monster or something. So we curse people for certain. So can you wish this guy or this woman should get dead? You cannot kill them. No, but it is, you know, because all the anger, frustration, depressions comes from this kind of hidden thing inside us. So I don't know, I asked the question appropriately, how to, like, you know, all this anger, how do you, because you cannot go to the court, you cannot prove, maybe there is a power, money, a lot of things are, but, you know, how are you going to, like, ask Allah to give these people punish?
So legally, from the Islamic law perspective, you know, don't kill the other lady. Number one, I want to make that clear. You know, and number two, you don't make dua that people are cursed either. So we should not be cursing people and making dua, you know, against them. Instead, make dua that Allah change their heart and Allah guides them. This is the best thing to make dua for. And also remember that, you know, justice. Sometimes we get justice in this life, but everyone's gonna get justice on Yawm al-Qiyamah in front of the just. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the just. And He is the infinite justice is going to be there on that day. So no one is going to be wrong. Everyone is going to be accountable. Best thing is make dua for that person that they change their ways. And then figure out how to cope with the fact that this person is wronging you and oppressing you, and not let that get to you. See, that's the important thing. So that I'll leave to Marwa to explain how to deal with that part.
I think one statement, Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel. Like that's just something that's a part of the Afkar al-Sabah and the Masa, where you're saying that Allah, like how can you fail if Allah's on your team? And then I am always for empowering, so whatever legal means within Sharia and within the country you live in, that is allowed and given to you, you exercise that and you just practice saying it over and over again, Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel. I have nothing else better to say than what Allah has taught us.
I get a question through a text message, you know, somebody get my phone somehow. I'm going to just, because if someone get mad at me later on, I didn't read the question, I will actually ask the question just in case. And if you guys like to, you know, answer the question. This person said, I have heard that if you dream of someone who passed away being happy, that means they are in a good place. I don't know if this is true, but I want to know if you see someone who passed away in a dream, and in the dream they are committing a sin, what does that mean? What should I do? I don't know if it's like we're trying to take, do tafsir of the dreams now, or any sheikh you'd like to answer this?
So the thing is, when it comes to dreams and having a good dream about a person and you see them smiling or something, that's a good sign for you. That is a comfort for you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So Allah can be sending this sign to you. With regards to what's going to happen to them, you hope for the best. And this is the way a believer should always be. We hope for the best, but we also be concerned that the worst can also happen. So when someone else passes away, you hope for the best, you make dua for them, you ask Allah to have mercy on them. And if there's a good sign, inshallah, it's a good sign, feel happy, feel good. If you see a bad sign, you see them committing some sin or something like that, you don't necessarily have to turn that into it. Look, dreams, let me give you this principle. Dreams are not an evidence of anything in Sharia or anything that's going to happen in the future per se. Because the dream can be from Allah, or the dream can be from shaitan, or the dream can be from your subconscious. The dream can also be interpreted correctly, or it could be interpreted incorrectly. So dreams are not something that we should put our trust in to determine anything we're supposed to be doing or any way we're supposed to be feeling per se. But if you see a good dream, you can take it as a good sign. If you see a bad dream, you're not supposed to share it with other people. And if you see a bad dream, if you see someone committing a sin or in a dream or something like that, you don't necessarily have to think bad about them. You don't necessarily have to think, oh, they were doing this thing. Something may have happened, you make an excuse for them, and you ask Allah, you make dua for them. Say, oh Allah, protect them from this, and oh Allah, protect us from this, from ever falling into that sin. That's the best way to go about it. And then there's a whole science of dream interpretation, but again, always take that with a grain of salt, because you could be interpreting correctly or you could be interpreting incorrectly. And lastly, be very careful about people who tell you that they can interpret dreams. Even if it's leaders and people who are, supposedly specialists, and they're charging money and things like that, be very wary of those type of people, because usually they tend to be con artists and things like that, right? So you just be careful about that, inshallah.
I just remember, it's like there is a sheikh used to say, if you have a dream of someone, give sadaqah on their behalf or make dua for them, because if it's good, then you want to, they made you happy. If it's sad or something, you want them to get the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's something, I wanted to share too. But the question there? Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. If one mentions or utters bad things or disease, can rely the decree of Allah? Some people, they say, النطق موكل بالقدر. Can you explain that? النطق. Okay, the question is reliable that, based off, like same like a dua, because they were mentioning something bad thing that they may happen. And it's better not to say, or it's okay, it doesn't matter. No, actually I'm asking Islamically. Yes.
So yeah, from an Islamic perspective, no. Right? So from a cultural perspective, some people, they say, don't say that, they're going to get scared, something's going to happen. If you say it's going to happen, then it's going to happen. Now, from an Islamic perspective, things don't happen like this, right? And from a causal perspective, things don't happen like this, right? So if somebody says flu, does that mean that they're going to get the flu? No, there's no evidence basis to believe that, nor is there any Islamic basis to believe that. So I've not come across any verse of the Quran, I've not come across any hadith that tells you to be careful about saying something like that. Now again, that doesn't mean you should be making dua for that thing or making dua that somebody else gets it. But no, in terms of if you mention something bad, this concept of be careful, if you say that thing, then it's going to happen. Usually I think this is kind of like a cultural, disciplinary tactic of people just, be careful what you say, watch what you say, because if you say it, then it might happen. They just wanted to prevent people from saying it. So maybe the intention was good originally, but it got exaggerated. And sometimes when things get exaggerated within a culture, it can actually sometimes, even though it would have been a good thing had it remained within bounds, it ends up becoming a problem because of the exaggeration. So there's no concept like that in Islam.
Sister has a question there. Then someone else messaged me actually another question. So I'll share it after. You have a question here, sister, right?
When we are taught to grieve for 3 days, but each of us grieve longer than that or at different phases, what's the thought process behind the 3 days or 40 days?
I think it took more about the aza of like accepting the condolences. That's more of morning. So yes.
So the Prophet ﷺ, he said that, you know what, grieving is for 3 days. You get 3 days to, sorry, not grieving, mourning is for 3 days. So you have 3 days of mourning, meaning that, you know what, when you suffer a loss, your family member dies or something like that, you're going to take off. You're going to be in a state of sadness, a different type of sadness than the sadness that's going to come later. You're not going to go to work. You're not going to go to school. People are going to come and say, hey, I would like to meet with you. I'm going to say real quick, salam, please don't bother me right now. I just want to be alone. That mourning period, that's a 3-day mourning period. So in Islam, we're not supposed to go beyond that and continue and say, you know what, I don't want to see anyone. I'm not going to go back to work. I'm not going to go back to school. You're supposed to move on with your life. Is the sadness going to remain? Of course it's going to remain. Is it going to remain? It can be like Wali said, it can be, there's no time limit. You may be sad for 6 months. You may be sad for 6 years. But the way in which you behave yourself in the first 3 days, you have an exemption. You know, you don't wail, you know, you don't complain to Allah, you don't go crazy in your thing, but you have you can kind of have that time to yourself, and you behave in a different manner in the first 3 days because you're coping with the immediate shock of that loss. But after 3 days, you're supposed to start to readjust and start to overcome that now. And you start to begin to deal with that. So that's what the hadith means. This authentic hadith of 3 days mourning maximum.
I got a question for Brother Wali. The question is, there are 5 stages of a grief. The person who has a question asking is, how do we know we are in which stage, and how do we pass this stage?
So yes, there is 5 stages. Again, everybody goes through different stages. Usually when somebody passes away, what ends up happening is we're in denial, fully. You know, if you're somebody, let's say, God forbid, if somebody in my family passes away, for me it would be, not at the moment, but because at that time what ends up happening is your brain goes in a state of shock. When that takes place, the first thing I want to do is, no, this can't happen. I have to see this. I have to see this person. Even if somebody tells me this person is dead, you know, your family member is dead. No, they can't be dead. I have to see them because I'm in a stage of denial. Sometimes, at certain times, if I was somebody who actually accepted the fact that, you know, my loved one has terminal illness, and I come to terms prior to their death, then I'll just go at the stage of, it either be bargaining, or sometimes I can get a little mild depressed, or I might not get affected at all. So it varies based on individuals. Because when somebody passes away, it hits people very differently in how your brain receives that information. So you can fall into any stages. So it's pretty much open at this end. But as long as you know that there are stages, then you need to realize that.
Jazakallah khair, inshallah. If there's okay, question there.
Assalamu alaikum to everybody. Actually, I know the topic for tonight is about the death and other consequences. I drive almost 40 miles to here to learn about the Islam and all the protection that we could have for ourselves and to help other people as well. My question is, as the other sister said, How we can, first of all, my first question is how we can, as a Muslim, protect myself against the, I'm very straightforward person about the, it's called, on Arabic it's called sihr, on English called hex and black magic. And not just that, if, first question is protect, and second question is how we can remove it. After remove, how we can protect for ourselves forever, because I'm just suffering almost about 20 months about this matter. And no matter I removed, I just pray and I just do the salat, it's come back. I'm just suffering 100% and each minute. I know it's not the topic, but I hope I'm going to get help.
Thanks so much.
So yeah, in general, the best way to protect it is to have, have strong iman, increase in your faith, to be a strong Muslim, and to read Surah Al-Baqarah inside your house, and to read the last two surahs, the Mu'awwadhatayn. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. So constantly reciting this is one of the best ways to get protection. In terms of how to deal with it, there are different ways. The first and most important thing is to really diagnose and determine, is it actually black magic, or is it some other type of thing that's going on? Is it some kind of hasad or some type of envy, or is it some type of mixture of maybe a psychological issue that appears to be similar to black magic? This is very important for this diagnosis to take place. So there are some people who you can initially see to determine what is the actual case, and then once you clarify which one it is, then there's different ways to get help. So if you see me after, inshallah, personally, I can give you some references of people to go and check from a psychological perspective, as well as from people who know how to exactly deal with that, and they can do ruqya. So ruqya is known as ruqya shar'iyya, the correct ruqya of recitation of Quran on the person. That is one of the best ways to deal with these type of things. So just come and see me afterwards, and I'll talk to you on private level, inshallah.
Brothers and sisters, thank you so much, Jazakumullah khair, for being here. And we couldn't have this event without our amazing speakers, Dr. Marwa, Sheikh Mustafa, Brother Wali. And inshallah, we'll see you in more occasions and more events, but inshallah, more pleasant event and occasion, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Subhanakallah bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.